So I've shown this graph before, and it's our 7-step process for federal revenue success. I'm going to be talking about the roadmap, right, to the 3 paths of revenue. And each path can follow a similar process for how do you go after that dollar. And so I'm going to reference this graphic. I probably won't show it again, but I want to show it now as I reference it. In here, the first part of the process, the first 3 steps, we call it VTO, visibility, targeting, and outreach. And this is the effort of how do I begin to go down each one of those roadmaps, or excuse me, paths of revenue. And then over on the right-hand side, that should be really normal to you, that I've established relationships in each one of those paths, and I'm going to identify opportunities, write proposals, and win contracts, right? That's the idea. But keep VTO in your mind as you go forward, because that is the focus for us on how we advise people getting into each one of these paths. So let's go down these scenarios, and I might bring this guy up again just to remind you. So just to reminding you, right, the subcontracting under a small, priming under an agency, and subbing under a large. I'm going to leave this screen up for a bit. And actually, I want to see, I'm missing something here. And give me 1 second. Just hitting a little tech, and I apologize for that. But this thing I want to show you here on this graphic, right, is that when you're looking at the 3 paths, you can see it from different angles. So let's begin with those of you who are not making any money or no federal dollars. And the only place you belong, in my recommendation, is over here on the left-hand side, subcontracting under small businesses. It's, I describe it here as this is perfect for getting started. That's you. Actually, let me just walk through these bullets if you're reading them, right? The reason I put those 3 bullets under sub is that those 3 stages. If you're not making any money, it's perfect for getting started. The second bullet, similarly situated entities. If you're making money, this is an awesome path for you to be able to team back up, go after larger contracts, et cetera, where you're teaming under small businesses to get a piece of a pie. 8A Stars 3 is a great example of a vehicle that's like that. And then the last one, access to set-asides. This one talks about large businesses, right? In particular, how they might get access to a set-aside like an SDVO set-aside. But it's also for a woman-owned business who doesn't have a HubZone certification, and there's an opportunity they want to go after that's on HubZone. When you sub under a small and you have a plan around these folks, then you can begin to get access to those opportunities that are set aside for woman-owned, et cetera. The next set of bullets here where I say prime with agencies in the middle, you want to go after this. And to me, again, keep in mind, there's so many different levels of experience on this call today, but you want to be thinking about priming in an agency when you have federal experience. And what that means to me is that you've been subcontracting. This is not a hard stop. I'm not telling you that you may not prime with agencies. I'm recommending that you don't, because you will build a much stronger company, and you will grow your company much faster if you start first with subcontracting under smalls, which will give you that federal experience, right? The first bullet in the center. And then the second thing is 3 years of revenue. I'm saying you want to have experience before you go into an agency and try to prime contract. So if you're a commercial company and you've got 3 years, that first bullet will keep you out of priming for a second, in my recommendation, because yes, you have experience making money at this, but you don't have federal experience yet. So go do some subcontracting. If you're brand new to business in general, well, you want to get both federal experience and 3 years of revenue. This is general guidelines I give to people about when do you get your 8A. It's like you don't get your 8A until you've got federal relationships and contracts, et cetera. So that way, when you have your 8A, you can chase that 9-year window with the past performances that you have. Okay, anyway, sticking with prime agencies, the third bullet, I put down security clearances, right? This is one of the advantages of subcontracting under a small when you're a newer business, is that you can work with them and get sponsored by them to get your own personal clearance and then maybe a facility clearance. What's the point of priming at an agency that might require clearances that then you're jumping through all these hoops? What we often do, and why I say it's a mistake that we try to prime too soon, is that we're putting all this pressure on us going into a prime contract of not only having to do the work, and that's a really vital thing you have to pay attention to. But we also are trying to learn how do we get access. Like if you're in Department of Homeland Security, their access requirements are really weird, right? And it just takes time. Once you're in there, it's fine. You've got people on your team who are in there, people who can give you access in and out of the building, whatever it is, right? And so I'm saying have your security clearances already before you even start knocking on a agency's door to prime. Of course, you can go do it. Like I said, I'm not telling you may not go do this. I'm just saying it's way easier for you if you have federal experience, if you have 3 years of revenue, if you have security clearances in place already, access to that agency that you want to go do more business with. And the last bullet in the center there is strategic partners. I did a whole nother video and you can find that, but that video, training, that training talks about the idea of having 8 strategic partners. And when you make those strategic partners focus towards the agency you want to go into, not only will you be ready, right, the top 3 bullets to knock on the door of the agency and prime, but those strategic partners will be able to subcontract under you and help you win, right? So you will have developed a relationship. Sometimes when you go to a prime contractor, an agency to prime, they want to know that if you have a team formed, that team has worked together before. And so having strategic partners before you go knock on the door of an agency to prime contract with them, yet again, makes you so much stronger and ready to win and deliver, right? That's the biggest thing for a lot of us who advise people is it's not just about winning. Winning is, I know this is going to sound weird, right? But winning is easy. It's the delivery that's the part that really matters, because you got the whole effort of delivery. And if you do a good job, you've got people talking about that inside that agency and maybe others. And if you do a poor job, maybe people are talking about that. And so we want you to be able to be prepared to not only win a contract, but actually execute well on it. And then the last one, subbing under a large. The reason I have these bullets in here, yes, you need to have federal experience, but here I'm recommending that you should have prime federal experience. With large companies, there's all sorts of risks that they're paying attention to. They have many people besides, the typical capture or business development person you're dealing with. And so a lot of people are looking in there trying to manage their risk. And one way they can manage it is to know that you have primed a contract yourself before, in particular with subcontractors, so that you know what they're dealing with. You know how to be a good subcontractor because you've been a prime managing subcontractors. You also have dealt with a lot of the issues of payment and other stuff. These are all risks that larges pay attention to. Do you have a strong back office? And so if you have primed before in the federal space, then there's a good chance you probably have a fairly strong back office running your company, right? And that's how a large might see it. They'll, of course, do a lot more due diligence, but just the fact that you had a prime puts you up a little higher. Strong core competency, right? They're not looking for random companies. They're not looking for, largest could care less about a woman-owned company or veteran-owned company, right? It's not about bringing in minority-owned firms just so we can give minority-owned firms a shot at business. What they want is to make sure there's a fair balance of who they're awarding subcontracts to. But what they need is people who can help them solve their customers' requirements in support of their mission, right? And so your strong core competency will impress those larges. And so when you've had a few years to really build that up and build past performances along with that, that attracts a large to you. Contract vehicles is another way that larges are attracted to smalls. In particular, if you have a vehicle they don't have. So you 8A stars 3 companies out there, that's like a 10 billion or 50. I can't even remember anymore. But it's a I think it's a $50 billion ITI company or IT contract vehicle for 8 years. But that thing there is attractive to larges because they don't have access to it. They can't bid on that. It not only is only for small businesses, but it's only for like 1,000 8A firms. Out of the 100,000 plus businesses, only 1,000 have access to that. If you have strong core competency and federal prime experience, and you go in and say, I have access to this 8A vehicle, now you're building a relationship with them that they might be attracted to you, and you can be a sub on their opportunity. So it's a good, again, coming back to strategic partnership. And the last one is good agency relationships. Largest want smalls or teammates, not just smalls, but largest want teammates who have access within an agency. I used DHS as an example a minute ago. If you're doing subcontracting and prime work at DHS, and you have built relationships with contracting officers and program offices, then that will make you attractive to a large who might be trying to go after a contract at DHS as a prime, where they say, great, you can be part of our team. You'll be able to help us with not just proposal writing maybe and delivery, but also with capture, right? And so those are why I wrote those bullets down there. So do me a favor, in the chat, if this is making sense, go ahead and put 3 paths and just let me know that it's making sense what I'm talking about. And I'm going to take a sip of water here really quick. Also, I'm going to say this at the end, but if you'd like a copy of that 3 paths as a handout, I'd be happy to provide that to you. Okay, so we got about 10, 12 minutes left, and I want to talk about these scenarios and what you should be doing depending on the stages that you're at. So if you're not making any money, right, then the path you want to be on is subcontracting under a small business. And I don't want to go too far into this because I've talked about this before in another training, and we can show you that. But if you understand what I'm saying, that you can get experience in the federal space by subcontracting under a small, and you're not making money, then just do that. Some of the other advantages, though, is that small businesses are open to other small businesses. They remember what it was like to start up and get going. A lot of us smalls forget, like we think we're not. We think we're less than sometimes, if I just say it this way, right? We forget that we are subject matter experts with 10, 20 years of experience. A large, if they looked at you and wanted to hire you, they would look at you as a senior person, let's say. But if you go off and start your own company and you're a one-person shop, sometimes you feel a little bad. You're like, oh, I'm just a one-person shop. But the reality is you are the subject matter expert. You are the authority on your space. You need to remember that so that when you're working with companies, you can communicate that to them in every way you're talking. But when you subcontract under smalls, when you knock on the door and you begin to do VTO, right? You really targeting smalls and doing outreach with them, they will remember what it was like to be there. So you won't have to work as hard to convince them. Then when you move to roadmap or the second and third paths on the roadmap there, you'll have both your SME power and your past performance to begin to have conversations. But getting into a small business is the fastest way for you to make revenue. If you're starting at zero and you want to make $1 million, or if you already have revenue and you're trying to make your first $1 million in federal revenue, teaming up with small businesses is the absolute fastest way. All the extra junk is out of the way that you would have to do, and you just focus really on the relationship with those small businesses and helping them understand how you can help them win, where you get a piece of their work, 10%, 20%, maybe even 49%. But whatever it is, you will grow if you build those relationships. So no money, start there. As you mature, then you can look at the next 2 steps, which I'm about to talk. So as you make a few million, let's talk about if you're making $2, $3, $4 million right now in the federal space. My next challenge to you, right, is don't walk away from that first roadmap item of teaming, subcontracting with smalls. You still want to subcontract with smalls, but now you're totally able to be able to go after prime contracts with an agency. And so what I want you to start thinking about here is, what's my percentage split? You should not let this happen by chance. You should create a strategy or a goal, and it doesn't have to be complicated. 1 page, right? I mean, you saw what I just did with this. Let's see if I still have it. This guy. So you see how I have these 3 sections, right? Down each path, as you grow, just put a number there. Don't even get crazy with fancy 10-page documents or something. What percentage, if you're making $4 million, what percentage are you going to continue to make as a sub? And what percentage are you going to make with a prime? I would submit, if you're making $3 million, but you haven't really primed yet, that maybe it's a 25-75% split. You still keep building your past performance experience with other smalls that are in there, and you can grow the size of the smalls that you're working for. So if you subcontract under smalls that were doing 5 and 10 million. Now you can be subcontracting under companies that are doing 20 and 40 million. That means they're going after 25 and $100 million opportunities. You can get a piece of that and grow. So that first roadmap path, you want to continue that. 25% of it is to go into an agency now that hopefully you've been working at. When you have relationships in that you've developed through subcontracting under a small, and you start priming with an agency, you can say, hey, tell these people, tell the people you have relationships with, I'm going out there, I'm going after these opportunities. I'd love to team with you. We had success when it was this way. Now I'd like to make it this way, and use sub under us. When you have good relationships, they'll love to do that because now they're diversifying their efforts as well. So if you're making a few million, not only do you want to be on both those paths, but one thing I want you to keep in mind is go super focused. If you're making less than 10 million, you should not be in many agencies. If you are, try to bring yourself down to the best agency that fits for you. I'm working with a customer who she and I were talking earlier in the week. We're going to talk today, and we're talking about HHS, and it's so big. But she's got customers outside of HHS as well. We not only are working together to help her focus down on HHS, but also into an agency and into an office. And this one particular office perhaps could double the size of her company in the next 12, 24 months for sure. By having that focus, it forces you to create a strategy around it. And so I'd encourage you to put a focus for you on your efforts as well. So if you're doing tens of million and you're getting ready to graduate, right? At this point, you should be working with all three of these clouds, all three of these paths. And I think you already know what you're doing. And so what I want to talk to you about and send you away with thinking today is, as we start getting closer to graduating from small to large, and this goes back to the large example as well, we forget about small businesses. We keep wondering, how are we going to compete? We're stressing out about, do we have contract vehicles that say we're a small that we can carry after we're no longer a small? And if you're in that space, you know what I'm talking about. But what I'm suggesting that people miss is the value of small businesses. Small businesses get 100 billion plus in contract awards every year, right? Go have a plan to get a piece of that. If you're getting ready to graduate, then you're probably somewhere in that $30 to $50 million range. That means it doesn't take a lot of that 100 billion for you to grow your company. And if you've got plans for growing your company with a prime opportunities as an agency, and teaming with larges, by the way, never forget that you can team with larges. Larges team with each other. If you have a strong core competency and a strong agency presence, larges would be more than happy to team with you because they can win. You see teams all the time that have 5 or 10 people on it. So don't discount that. But make sure you have a strategy, not just a casual, hey, we'll team with smalls or whatever. Look at them and go, do you realize that there's a 3% set aside for like hub zones, 5% hubs set aside for 8A firms? 8A firms have those large contract vehicles. There's small business contract vehicles only for them. Well, as you're getting larger, you want to have strategic relationships with these folks that are that are small businesses smaller than you. So in that 20 million and below range, team with them. One strategy, the last strategy I'll give you here on this, is that if you're in that middle range of 20 to 40 million, let's say, and you're creating a plan for how do you have revenue strategy for each one of these paths, when you look to the smalls, don't just try to look at an opportunity and get it. Build strategic relationships with smalls that you can see will grow to a large someday. If you're helping them, if you're bringing them onto some of your opportunities, if you're teaming with them as a sub, you will be able to help them mature and grow in experience as well, where when it's time for you to work with them, you're ready. So I can see my time's coming up here. I'm hoping this makes sense to you. One of the things I want to leave you with is that, those two mistakes, right? Is the biggest mistakes newer smalls make is that we race to prime at an agency. I encourage you to slow down and look to small businesses. You can build a $5 million firm easily as a subcontractor under small businesses, and it will be way easier for you as you grow, and it will give you a much stronger foundation for your company. So when you do go into agencies, you're ready. When you do knock on larges, you're ready. If you're a larger company, large, small, or even a large, $1 billion firm, don't forget how valuable small businesses are as a strategy. When you create a 5-year strategy and you say, where am I getting my money? We often look at agencies, well, Navy and HHS or this or that. Well, don't forget about doing it from a size or a revenue path standpoint. How much money and where am I getting it from smalls? How much from the agencies and how much from the largest? When you do that, you're breaking it down to simple steps. And I love breaking things down to the simplest steps because when you do that, it's measurable and achievable. I don't look at the big thing. I set a high goal and that's it. But the steps that you do are how you achieve those high goals. Hope this makes sense. It's exciting for me to teach. If you would like a copy of that handout, put VTO, not VTO. Well, actually, if you want the VTO one, you can put VTO handout in there and I'll send that.